I understand how hard it can be because we didn't have any money growing up. It was tough, but honestly, some of the best times I've had in my life were when I was there. Do you know what I mean? Like, you had to go through your struggles, and people are very quick to judge. Everyone's trying to do their best, and some people are just not being given opportunities.
Welcome to Second Verse, the podcast where we dive into the stories of indie artists and music professionals who have found their second act in music. I'm Becky Boylan, singer-songwriter, StoryBrand certified brand messaging expert, and web developer. Like many of my guests, I've taken a winding path back and forth in my music, and now I'm passionate about helping other artists step into their own spotlight. Today, I'm joined by Jack Marchant, a London producer from the UK who has worked with artists like Georgiou Music, The Duelers, and many incredible unsigned musicians. His work has been featured on BBC Radio, and he recently signed his first contract with Warner Chappell. Jack's journey is one of persistence, reinvention, and understanding the business of music. From growing up in studios with his dad's band to working in live sound and eventually making the leap into full-time music production, Jack's story is packed with insights for artists and producers alike. We talk about the power of community, overcoming personal and industry struggles, and why building a sustainable career in music means thinking like a business owner. So grab a hot beverage, settle in, and let's dive into Jack's second verse. Welcome, Jack. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You have come into your artistry as a full-time project, but you're almost coming back around to it, it sounds like, from the way you grew up.
Sure. Growing up, my dad, he was in this heavy metal band, and they were trying for a very long time to get a record deal. And they had some good success locally, and it was going on for a very long time. And then they ended up landing a record deal. So I was being kind of not dragged around. I loved going, but I was being brought to all these music studios in London and Kent. Also being dragged to the gigs as well, because my mum and dad were split up. So my dad had us on weekends, and all the gigs were weekends. So, so we'd go to, like, literally sitting behind the drum kit, because he was the drummer at the time. There was no health and safety back then. You could just do what you wanted. And it was at behind places where your kids probably shouldn't have been, but it was great fun, and I don't regret any of it. There's some great experiences there, seriously good. I think that was a big part of it. My mum wasn't a musician, but she was into her music scene, so she was always like going out to gigs and bringing us with them. And yeah, I suppose just from a young age, I was just there all the time.
And you lived to tell the tale, even though there wasn't health and safety.
just about, honestly. Sometimes it's close.
So as you got to a point where you were looking for a career and maybe just trying to make money, talk about that part of your story.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, obviously I knew you had a massive music scene growing up, but I didn't exactly know you could go to college and do a music course, right? So I actually originally went and done software development, but I was still working in a music studio alongside that. One of my friends, his dad owned a music studio in Greenwich in London. So I just used to help out, set up the microphones in the rehearsal rooms and stuff like that. And then he told me, how come you study software development and not music? I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. So yeah, he put me onto a course in a place called Lewisham in South London, and I ended up going to college and then to university, which, if I'm honest, I felt like it wasn't a waste of time, but the things they were teaching there was always like, I felt like I was always a bit ahead of it because of working in the environment. And I suppose the main thing I got out of it was the networking side of it, learning to talk to people and create opportunities. And, where I suppose, I'm not saying I was one step ahead, because there's some very good people, like artists and producers there, but I'd had the experience of operating consoles and setting up, whereas a lot of people hadn't. I ended up naturally helping people out with their projects, as well as trying to do my own. So, yeah, it was just great. With that and the studio work, I started building up a kind of clientele of people to work with. And then I went on holiday to Spain, and I come back, and the owner of the studio had told me that he's decided to sell the studio. Right?
Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly. He was like, got 2 weeks before he puts it up for sale. He was older. He wanted to retire. I kind of get it. I didn't have money to take it over. I was like 21 or something. It was about 2 months after that. He sold the studio. And I didn't realize at the time, but the guy that took over the studio made a deal with him to say that he still had to rent it out to me to dry hire it, basically. So I could carry on my work. And that was one of the deals of taking it over, which I'm very grateful for. I still use it to this day. Someone else owns it, but now instead of people being employed there, everyone's kind of freelance. So I suppose during that time, when I left the studio, I literally had one person that I worked with for a very long time, literally one guy. And months after that, it was very slow. I'd get another person, and then they'd tell their mates, and some people I'd meet at university would come. And, I ended up building it up slowly until one day I met up with a guy called Georgiou Music, who is a rapper, right? So in the UK, I think he's pretty big over in the US now as well, but he's a rapper. We made this demo song about mental health, right? So, and the song was called Healing. We never had anything like this before. We recorded it in my bedroom, put it out, and it's like everywhere, 300,000 streams on this demo. And we're like, what? Like, we're getting about 15 before this, honestly. That was a really great thing. And that song just kept getting better and better until he almost became like a community for people struggling with mental health. It was very quick, very strong, and kind of hard to deal with at times, I'll be honest. And we thought, all right, we're going to re-record this song and do it properly. We got a great singer in who ended up having her own solo career after. We recorded it all again, much better quality. And we put it out, and it did well, but not as well as the demo that we had literally just recorded. And it was like, what the hell is going on? So we didn't get it. It's still 100,000 streams and whatever, but it did okay. But, the first one was like 750,000. And we were just like, how does this work?
Sometimes there's that lightning in a bottle, you hit it at just the right time. I love that you mentioned community, because in this day and age, it's not about, are you talented? Are you this? Are you that? We're assuming that people are. That's the bar. It's more about making that connection with people. And it is a really relatively recent movement that we care globally about mental health and how important that is. It's not surprising that would connect so well with people. That's what we can all hope for as artists, that we are building that community around those things that are so important to us, have that emotional feeling and connection. That's such a cool story, even though I understand it's mystifying when you're like, but I wanted to make it better. I wanted it to be my best music. And you didn't like my best music as much as my almost as best music. So that's actually funny.
Yeah, absolutely. As a producer, you think, oh no, it should be sounding amazing, but it just proves that as long as it's good enough, people just care about what you're saying and what you're doing. And this community started building stronger. It was Facebook at first, that started really building strong, right? So it ended up becoming from just a song to put out for mental health. It was like, okay, he's actually going to brand himself as this person that's going to help people with mental health. And we had both suffered with it prior, right? And I'm talking, this is about 6 years ago or something. So before a lot of people were doing this kind of thing. And so we was like, okay, we need to make some more songs and address the different areas of mental health now. So yeah, we did. He's very clever in terms of the business side of it. He knows what's going to connect with people, what's going to sell, how he can make money from it as well, which people don't like to say, but do you want to do this full time? You got to make money from it.
Absolutely. We can't have the art if we don't make room for people to make the art. They have to have the resources, because we can't all do this part time and put it out as if we're professionals. That can be a hang up for a lot of artists to think about, oh, I have to make money and I feel bad asking people to buy my music. But there's just no other way to do it. We have to get paid for our work just like we would with any other career.
Absolutely. And yeah, that part I feel like can be a bit strange, because especially for newer artists, you're trying to get them to buy a product somewhere they wouldn't usually go to buy it. Most people go into a store or, they don't go onto Bandcamp. And it's like, okay, so how then do you convince these people that what they're buying, they're going to get their value for it?
Right.
And how are you going to provide that community for them to feel like they're part of your journey?
Yeah. And that's especially in a day and age where we're not buying albums in the way that we used to. And that's where circling back to community is so important, because those are other ways to develop relationships and allow people to actually be patrons of the art and support artists directly. It feels like a new method, but it's actually not. It's a very ancient method of supporting artists. The starving artist model that we think about, it's almost paying your dues. It's actually, that's not the way it ever was. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And that's not the way that it needs to be. You talked about, before we got started, diving into this, but also being careful and not just going headlong into the process and without being prepared. That makes me think about that starving artist mentality that everybody said you always had to do, but you have different advice for people who want to get started, and talk about that.
Yeah, I think so. So I'll finish with Georgiou because he's gone on now to win awards. I sung one of them, the newer one. It's now nearly 20 million on Spotify. And globally, it's like 100 million. So people have now, and he's crazy, right? He's not even done a gig yet. And he's got 750,000 followers on one platform. And people are begging him to do a gig. And he's still like, I don't know if it's going to be enough people yet. And I'm like, come on. Right. There's many different avenues to make it. You just have to know what you want to do, I think, and be honest, like, with yourself, first. But yeah, sorry, carry on. What was you saying?
Oh, not at all. I think that people are afraid that they're not going to make it. It's not going to work out. And so in their fear, they may hold back, but at the same time, they may have been influenced by that starving artist concept. So if somebody says, gee, I don't know, should I get into music right now? What would you say to them?
I'm always initially a go for it guy, but you have to think realistically as well. This is just my advice to people, right? Like, I'd always say go for it, but if you're just going for it with nothing, it's going to be seriously difficult, and you're just going to end up back in a day job in no time. Right? I feel like before you take the leap, you need to get some things in place. Do you have enough clientele in any way, shape, or form? Do you have money behind you to support you in case you don't get the clientele? Or how long can you support yourself for? And I think them two things alone are important, because you need money to eat now, and you also need money for later. And then I think you need to know a lot about legal stuff as well, such as, are you taking a day rate for this? Or are you taking like writers or publishers? Or how is this getting split? And what kind of agreements have you got in place with people to make sure that you're going to get paid down the line?
Absolutely. Especially as artists start to get into the nitty gritty of what's involved in being an artist, it can be overwhelming. There's so much information to know, and it's not the same as many other industries where it's very clearly laid out. So it can really be a challenge for folks. They may not have to go for a degree in this. And in fact, a lot of degrees won't even give you this information. It's important to make sure they have good people they can refer to who can help them navigate these challenges and make sure they do it right. And I think that's all really great and important advice. Make sure that you're making a plan just like you would with any other business, because we are in business, and be prepared and how you will invest in yourself, because you do have to spend money to make money. Make sure that you have an understanding and a support system so that you account for all of these things, so that you do get paid what you're worth and according to your value, and do it the right way. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like that's a big problem that's happening at the minute, is there's a lot of people that are taking this whole, hungry thing in the wrong way. They're going out and going, I'm going to do your mix for free. I'll record you for free. And what they end up with is like, a less than average product to say the end, because usually these people that are offering it for free are just starting out, which, is fine. You've got to get some experience, but what you should be doing really is working with people at a similar level, not trying to approach people and just look. It's like you're basically lying because behind social media, you can say, oh, I've done this and this and this. And you can make anything up and make it look good really online. And people go, oh, yeah, we send my to him. And then, they'll do a free mix and the artist might go, oh, it's good enough because not all artists have great ears. They might put it out and then go, oh, well, everyone's criticizing it or no one's listening to it.
Yeah.
On top of that, it lowers the bar for all working musicians and producers, where say we have a rate of X amount of pounds as a standard, artist or whoever chooses to work with you is going, but this person's done it for this little amount. Why am I going to give you this much? Suddenly everyone's got to find a point where they end up meeting, and it constantly brings how much money is actually in the industry down.
Exactly. And it also is a really great way to damage relationships before you actually get started, because you're not offering value, even if you're just underselling yourself. We'll be back with more after the break. The second verse is sponsored by Attitude Creativity. Many indie music artists don't have a website that grows their audience and reflects who they are, so they get lost in the noise of streaming. Marketing and brand messaging with Attitude Creativity helps boost your brand and build a site that hits all the right notes. You want to be an artist who stands out from the crowd, and to do that, you need your music to be heard. If your website doesn't reflect who you are or make an impact, you feel like a singer who's been handed a pair of drumsticks instead of a mic. You deserve a website and brand messaging you can be proud of, and that doesn't take time away from your music. As an artist like you, I understand how overwhelming websites and marketing can be. And that's why, putting on my other creative hat, I put my decades of marketing and development experience to work for you. You'll no longer have to apologize for your website. You'll look and feel like a professional with a custom story branded website you can be proud of. And right now, you can get a head start with my free downloadable EPK blueprint and start building your electronic press kit to promote your music. Head to attitudecreativity.com/blueprint to get your copy. That's Attitude, ATTITUDE, creativity.com/blueprint. When you sell at a good rate, you're actually giving an exchange of value. You're saying, I'm worth this amount because of what I'm going to offer you. And so it's going to be worthwhile. But when you're undercutting that, you're diminishing yourself. And then, as you've said, affecting the industry. And the better way is just go online and get a whole bunch of stems and start getting reps. Practice with what's already out there instead of practicing on unsuspecting starving artists.
There's so many websites you can get free stems for, or even if you just ask people like, oh, do you have any old stems? Like most people will just say, yeah, you can use that or something, So.
And then you have a target too, because once you've practiced with those stems, you're going to have a finished product out there that you can compare with. How did I do? How close did I come? Did I better their mix? Maybe you did. You'll never know that until you have that reference point as you're growing and developing your ear as a producer. That's such a wonderful point, because I have seen it so many times. The recommendation to do exactly what folks are doing, just go bother somebody and do one for free. But there's no value in that for anybody. It says you're an amateur and you may or may not provide value to this other person. And it's definitely not the way to grow, not the way to build your relationships and actually develop partnerships and ongoing folks that you can work with. So that's a huge thing, I think, for artists and producers.
Like you kind of mentioned earlier, like especially for like people that are earning money from it, and lowering your rates, because then you've got this natural thing in your head where, oh, but they haven't paid me this much, so I don't have to give them as much attention as someone who had paid me this much. And it doesn't really work like that. You naturally get this thought, oh, well, hold on, I'm only doing it for free for you, so I don't really have to prioritize it for you. And then it's just a horrible thing to get into.
Exactly. So it sounds like you were doing music alongside other things, and then talk about what inspired you to move along and make music the priority. I know that it was a significant situation for you about a year ago.
So I suppose when I was a young adult, I wasn't just making money from music. Like I said, I was working in the music studio, and that was paying my wages. As soon as he sold it. I was like, oh dear. Do you know how hard it is to get into this industry? I knew I had to get a day job. The first one I got was in a kitchen, and then I went to a supermarket, and then I joined live events, which was pretty fun. I got to do some cool stuff there. So
I
yeah, I'll be
bet.
honest. Yeah. Oh, everyone. I worked, the company I worked for had really good contracts, and we did a lot of the big arenas and festivals in the UK and even some abroad. So yeah, it was real fun. And I was a sound technician in the theatre and worked for an AV company until last year. So I, somewhere along the line, basically developed 4 herniated discs at the time it was in my back. I could feel something was wrong at first. It was weird. It's like, something's wrong, but it doesn't bother you that much.
Yeah.
And then I got ill, really ill, had sepsis actually. And it took me 8 months to recover. And this was in 2020. And when I say recover, it took me 8 months to be able to walk like around the shops. After that, I really noticed what had happened to my back and my central nervous system. I had a lot of surgeries and stuff after that. I wasn't in a mind frame at that time to start running my own business again. I joined another company, an audio and visual company, which again was fun. I was doing a lot of the programming on the desks and setting some stuff up. It was fun, but I couldn't do the lifting anymore. It got to a point January last year, actually, and I was hit by a lorry. So I was in a car stationary, and the lorry just failed to stop completely and just hit the car, which caused some extra issues in the back. Every time I was at that day job, I was like, I can't physically lift stuff higher than here anymore. Some of these consoles are like 270 kilos.
Oh,
So,
my. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It takes 6 of you to lift them and it's still heavy. So, yeah, I just thought, you know what? I'm making just enough money now that I could go into music and do it full time. I didn't even think about it. I just walked in the next day and handed in my boss a notice. And I was just like, I was very grateful. I appreciate everything that's happened throughout my life because I feel like it's led to where I am now. And yeah, I've got some issues, like obviously some physical issues, but overall, I'm in a good position. And yeah, so that's kind of led me back to doing music full time. And I don't regret it at all. Since I've gone full time with it in the right circumstances, it's been the best thing ever. I've got great contracts. I've worked with some great people. And when I say great people, I don't just mean big people. I love working with new artists. Some of them are really good. It gives me more creative control and freedom to do more of my own work rather than having to do this and that's it. So yeah, that's fun as well. It's been a bit of a ride, but now we're at that point where it's going okay.
I love that. And I love your perspective. I 2 years ago had spine surgery in my neck and I had 3 discs out of 4 that were needing to be addressed. And I had 2 replaced, 1 fused. And it was everything my surgeon promised in that it would alleviate the pain I'd had. And it did, but it introduced a complication. I had a paralyzed vocal cord and lost my voice entirely for 6 weeks. As a singer, that's terrifying. I'm so grateful that I've recovered, but it took me a couple of years to get my voice back to the condition that I wanted it to be in. But it also reinforced for me that, yes, this is my passion. This is what I want to do. I can identify with that clarity that, yes, this is the direction to go. And this is worth working toward and making the effort towards. I love your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Honestly, like you didn't have your vocal cords. How did you even bring that back? Did it just come naturally, or was it something you have to train?
It's a lot of vocal training, a lot of therapeutic approaches to singing. Straw phonation was a huge benefit for me because it's a very gentle way to get everything going. And at some point, because it's sort of a nerve problem, I think it does have to just wake up and join the party again. But I got my speaking.
Like me anyway.
Like, hey, wake up, come back to the party. It was interesting because I got my speaking voice back before I got my upper register. So there was just a hard stop at a certain point that I could only sing to a certain note. And then there was nothing. It took a long time to get past that, which was also very scary. It was the next scary thing in the process. But it seemed like it took forever. Looking back now, it seems like a world away. I'm really glad that it's actually, I guess it was 3 years ago. It doesn't feel like that now, but looking ahead toward what is this going to take, that felt like forever.
Yeah, that's incredible. Have you done your own podcast yet? Maybe someone should interview you as well. That's a great story.
I'll definitely talk about it more and
Yeah.
share it in an episode and explain what that was like. But yeah, it's amazing that there are a lot of artists who are able to take, whether it's through the words or the music, their stories in the sense of the emotion, the things they're excited about, things they value, or the hurts they want to help people work through. Once that makes that into the music in some way, is that authenticity that I think people connect with so much, just like that song about mental health. And I think that makes all the difference between something that is crafted to kind of match the industry versus really putting emotion and heart and energy into what we're doing, whatever the genre, whatever the vibe.
Yeah, 100%. And you touched on something earlier about how sometimes something big like that happens to make you realize what you need to be doing in life. It's incredible how you overcome these big things, or you get through something like sepsis or your spinal issue, and then you're like, oh, well, I suddenly just know what I need to be doing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's almost like something just comes over you. And
we all have our Billie Eilish Barbie moment of what was I made for?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So as a producer and a writer, because you're collaborating so much, you're not necessarily following certain themes of your own artistry, but talk about the personal slogan that you had because of this role as a producer.
Oh, so here's my look. So it says music for all, no matter the journey.
I love that you have that printed right there on your shirt. That's so perfect.
Yeah, one of my friends has a clothing company. He's very kind.
Collaborations are everything, that's for sure. Expand a little bit on that. Music for all, no matter the journey. I love that.
So for me, I'm very soft in a way to people. I see people's struggles. I understand how hard it can be because I grew up in social housing in Southeast London, and we didn't have any money growing up. It was tough, but honestly, some of the best times I've had in my life were when I was there. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's this community thing again, like growing up. The whole estate I lived on, you're all best mates. Everyone looked out for everyone. Everyone helped everyone out. And no one had a lot of money, but somehow you always managed to do everything because some person was like, oh no, we're doing this today. Come with us. We're doing this. You always had such a great time. But then at the same time, you had to go through your struggles, and people are very quick to judge. They see someone that comes from somewhere less fortunate, and they just instantly get this image of, no, I don't want anything to do with that person. And I think because of what I've been through, I understand these people, everyone's trying to do their best, and some people are just not being given opportunities. That kind of led me to want to help as many people as I can within means. If people are great at what they do, or if they have a really good story, or something about them is inspiring, I'll work with them, and we'll figure something out that benefits both of us in terms of how we can get this done. And I think sometimes a lot of people are a bit nervous to reach out because they think, oh, this is going to cost me like an arm and a leg. And it's like, well, it depends how you want to go about it. If you want to record it in Abbey Road Studios, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
That's for sure. That is so meaningful to me because you just sometimes need an opportunity. A lot of the celebrities that we know these days, they had someone who gave them an opportunity in many cases. And we're a lot of times very withholding, and everybody just feels like I need to worry about myself. And I think that's the scary part of why it's easy for us to dismiss people based on just that quick thought and glance and where they may be coming from. But I think it's so beautiful that you're doing this, especially in the context of music, because we all have the ability to connect with music as we're listening to it. We don't know who's listening thousands of miles away, but we may be having the same reaction and emotional connection and encouragement. So there's so many ways to flatten that and build community around that. I love that perspective and how you work with folks. That's just beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Honestly, it's something that's just true to me. I think a big part of knowing your brand is, what do you really believe in and what do you feel strongly about? I didn't have this brand until very recently, because I didn't know. I say recently, it was a couple of years ago now, but I was working in a studio at 19. I didn't know why I was doing it per se. Everyone says, "Oh, I do music because I love music," but why are you really doing it? It's like, and then them stories that are like coming from these artists, like up and coming artists, they're inspiring, and that's where you get some of your best work. In conversations, sometimes you have to have deep conversations with people, and it's a lot about trust as well, trusting the people you're working with. Within that comes some of the strongest lyrics, some of the strongest music, and some of the best ideas. You've reached the darkest point, so you can trust no matter what. And throwing ideas out, getting in front of the mic, then it doesn't seem so scary, because you just spoke about something that's a lot more scary than getting in front of the mic.
Yeah. And especially if their stories are really unique, in that specificity, you have the opportunity for it to be more universal because it sticks in the mind and captures the attention. But that level of authenticity, when you've been through something very visceral and difficult and can bring that emotion out and write about it, those are the songs that, even if it has nothing to do with my experience, really stick with me as a listener, and I think stick with a lot of people. And if they don't have the opportunity to get in front of a microphone and we're missing out on that art, that would be a tragedy.
Absolutely. I also look back in time who my influences were. And when I actually hear what they're writing about, it's the ones that were like big were always something that was close to them, or something that was happening at that time. Like, not so much just to them, but as a whole country, or like something that's happening in the world, or, like even like something like Living on a Prayer, like, something about working class people, like, and you're just trying to make it through. That song's like massive, and you wouldn't really think something like that's going on about the community, but it is. It's,
Yeah.
it's what's happening at the time in that place. And that's why I think these songs connect to people, is because they're living it. You know what I mean? I think it's also
Yes.
a reason why love songs have done so well, because everyone has a heartbreak and everyone loves someone. And it sounds cheesy, but I think it's true.
It is. And it's something that you can say, oh, well, maybe I don't have this exact, these lyrics are a little bit different than what I'm really going through, but it still feels so authentic. And I've laughed at myself sometimes recently as I'm listening to music, thinking a little bit more on a critical level and realizing that these lyrics have nothing whatsoever to do with me. But it may be a song that I've just loved musically and belted the lyrics to most of my adult life, or even going back to my teen years. And those are the ones that really stick. Sometimes you don't even understand the lyrics and you just connect with it anyway, because there's all of this feeling that comes out of the entire process and production. And it's way easier to do that when there is that authenticity behind it. Then you can really build it up. And it's not to say that we don't just get excited about dancing to some, poppy whatever.
Yeah.
Some of those songs are really fun. They're really great. We need that kind of art too, but
Yeah.
it's the art that makes its way in at another level. Even if it comes out in that same vibe, it may still be an upbeat dance song, but you can just tell when that story is less formula and more heart and craft. It's a totally different sort of thing. And I think those are the ones that really stick.
Absolutely. Like them, definitely like dancey pop songs, they definitely have a time and a place. Sometimes there's a lot of trouble going on in the world or something, and we might just need a dancey poppy song that's going to pick up the whole nation again and make us realize actually it's not so bad. Just to take everything with a pinch of salt.
Exactly. Art is good for everybody.
Definitely.
So I think a lot of artists, and especially when you're a producer as well, can struggle with building that community through social media and the web and trying to get yourself out there.
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest here. Like, I don't get on too well with social medias. But at the same time, I've started doing it more in the last year. I've realized it's a big part of where we are as a kind of industry and as a whole at the minute. Everything's online now. Really, you have to use social media for something. And I tend to use it as a kind of portfolio, but also a bit of a community. And what I try and teach other people is just stuff I've learned from artists that I work with that have done it very well. Someone like Georgiou or Jay France from the Jewelers, they've done it well. But they're at two different ends of the spectrum. So Georgiou doesn't gig. Well, he hasn't yet, shall I say. I'm not going to say anything. but, yeah, and he's very good at keeping a community on social media. Like, he engages with his fans. He puts a lot of, content up, videos of himself. He asks them questions. He does lives. He's, very, very good. He'll write some lyrics and he might do a little video and be like, oh, hey guys, do you think this is good enough? Does this resonate with you enough? Because obviously what he's writing is for people with mental health. So, he has to make sure from a musical and business point of view that it is actually resonating and it is what people are going through. And I think a big part of that is he generally does want to help, so
Yeah.
it's being honest, like, what is it that you want to do and get out of this, I think. Whereas Jay France, he's a South Londoner. He talks like a proper South Londoner, and he's cool. He does a lot of gigging. They play massive arenas like Wembley, the O2, all the big ones. They've toured Europe, and I think they've toured America now. But he's a very happy soul. And he's like, everything's like, he sees the world in colour and stuff. It's great. He makes videos of him on the road with Tiber and Pete, who are lead singers of the Jewelers, and they'll just be doing happy videos. That's what he believes in. He believes the world isn't a bad place and everything's great. He wants to help people uplift themselves in that way, and that's how he gets his community, and they also do a lot of things locally. They have a local place in Tunbridge Wells, which the lead singer owns, and they often go down there when they're not on tour and do like small enclosed gigs where there's only about 300 people. They'll do signings after and have a drink with people. So, that's a way that they would build a community.
Right. Yeah. There's that exchange of relationship, whether it's happening virtually or in person, that they're able to accomplish. And I think that is so important and can be daunting for indie artists who are just trying to put their feelers out and get some information going. Because initially, especially when you're releasing music, you're having to give people all these links. Go find me here, go watch my videos there, go to this place, go to that place. And it can just get overwhelming and confusing. What is more helpful is to bring them back to your home base with a website that invites people into a story and is the hub to go out to all those places to find them virtually and even in person, but to be very thoughtful about building that brand messaging that is more than just, here's my gig, here's my track, rather than just a ton of calls to action. It's a centralized place to build that kernel of relationship and then take them where they need to go so that they can make that authentic connection. The daunting part is following all the instructions and rules that everybody says you have to do this way and you have to post this many times and it has to be about this random thing or that dance. All of those things just distract, because at the end of the day, just like with the authenticity in your music, how you present yourself and how you interact needs to be sustainable and needs to be truly who you are, or it's just going to burn you out. That can be the big challenge for a lot of artists who may make those efforts initially really energized and excited, and before long realize that they just can't keep that going. And also should be supporting the creative process rather than sucking up all the time that you want to put into your creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big reason I stayed away from social media for a long time. I did find it very distracting. I'd get almost hooked on it. I'll be like, what do I have to post next? Why didn't they like the song video as much as a picture of me with something? And you get 250 likes on a photo of yourself and 15 on a song video. And it's like, well, why isn't anyone? Surely this is more interesting. But no, well, I was at a seminar last November. It's called the Ultimate Seminar Funding by a company called Creating Vision. If there's any other Londoners that see this, you should check them out. It's free anyway. They have guest talkers, right? Nick Design, Jay-Z, and loads of up-and-coming artists. And they give you advice. And there was a marketing team there, and they were like, it said something that stuck with me. People care more about who you are than what your music is. So when, for example, if you just put up a song, very few people are going to click on it until they get to know you. Because they want to know, you know, do I gel with this person's personality, or do I like what they're doing? Like you said, you've got to be authentic and have that message that they, as a community, will connect to. And then once you have that, you can start selling your music to them.
Yes, we have this unprecedented access to people because of our cell phones and social media. And so we have greater expectations. We can't really let people get away with the mystery too much, or at least a lot of listeners are not really that interested in that. They want to know that they can be part of your tribe, that they can actually be connected to you in a certain way. That can be a little bit overwhelming, but once we feel free enough to share that at a healthy level and then connect that to our music, that's where we will build that community of people who are looking to identify with what we do and the art that we make and the values that we have.
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. People want to know you personally, but share it on a healthy level. It can get very overwhelming. I also forget a lot of the time to do things. For example, I will be in one state of mind on social media, and then I'll be doing the music. I find it very hard to split them. Some people I know, they'll be in the music studio making videos of themselves. And I'm just like, how can you do that? I'm like, we're meant to be working right now, you know, and making these songs. It can be very stressful for someone not really fluent on camera. It is very distracting and hard, and you do feel a bit self-conscious at first. For me anyway, it was horrible, like having to pick up a phone, try and video myself, or like take photos and talk to people. It's a bit weird at first, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But you do soon get used to it.
Yeah, you can be. And I will say it is a little bit the luxury of the producer that you don't have to do it at the level that is expected of an artist. But I think that that all needs to be within the context of maintaining good mental health, because we've seen so many influencers and content creators who have pushed past that boundary of mental health and either had to step back for a bit, but in much sadder scenarios have really suffered consequences. So it's an important resource and a tool, but it really still does have to come down to, if you need to focus on your creativity and your mental health, that needs to take a priority. And the other is a supportive role just to keep connection with people, but it can't take over in a way that's going to be detrimental and take away your art from what we really need in the world, because we do need people's art. That's what it's there for.
Yeah, absolutely. Keeping healthy is, while you're doing it, both physically and mentally, is a very important point, because I'm very guilty of doing this sometimes. I'll be working on something and I'll forget to eat. I'll be like all day and it's 10 at night and I haven't eaten anything. Suddenly you start feeling a little tired for a couple of days because you haven't been eating or drinking properly. It's very hard to keep up with it, but it's something that I think is important, you know, so, you know, keep your mental and physical well-being in check in the studio.
Yes, definitely. I've done that too, where I've been in the middle of a track and I'm like, what time is it?
Yeah.
Especially when it's going great. It's just so good. And you want to do this one little thing. And before you know it, you've blown past a meal or two.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one other thing to mention is, I think having a good mentor is something that not a lot of people do. A good thing that I found really that transforms me, like with my skills rather than in any mental capacity or anything, is just having someone that I trust, someone that I know, okay, you're probably like 5 to 10 years ahead of where I would want to be. from now, like, why don't I just give you X amount for this amount of sessions a month? And then we just go through my work and improve it in every way we can. You know, artists, producers, engineers, anyone, needs to think about is that you are going to get better as time goes on, but having someone there from an outside perspective is a much better option than just trying to figure it out yourself, because you can't always see where you're going wrong. Having someone that you trust that's more experienced than yourself has probably been through these before and can help you get there quicker. So
That is excellent, because especially since it's so easy to DIY music these days, it's very easy to also think that, well, I can just figure this out. I can watch a couple of YouTube videos, follow all of these tutorials, and I will become a master and a pro. But there is nothing that can take the place of mentorship. And so many times we push that to the side because we think of it as a big expense. The reality is, if we can trust somebody else who's got a lot more experience than us, they can really take a lot of time off of what it's going to take us to figure out all the things they've already figured out. And so it takes a bit of humility to do that, but you're absolutely right. That is just such a massive step forward. And it also is a really mature way to look at the healthiest way to grow. So that's huge advice. I think that's really great.
yeah, thank you. Honestly, that's something I've done recently. Like, I was in that position where I was a bit naive. Like, no, I'll just go on YouTube. But why do I have someone else telling me what to do? And then I was getting bored. I was like, okay, well, I don't feel like I can break this wall alone. So I met someone, funnily enough, in that period, who's a very good engineer and he's worked with some really good names in the industry. I was just like, look, this is what I can afford every month. And we just worked something out now. And he's been really, really kind. And over a space of literally 4 months, the quality of the work has just gone from where it was to like different level. And honestly, I think, yeah, having a mentor is probably one of the best things I've done recently.
That's fantastic. I love it. This has been such an awesome conversation. What's the best way for our listeners to support your music?
I think to support my music, as you've heard during the conversation, I write with other artists. I don't necessarily have my own music out there, but I'm credited and I do get royalties from other artists that I work with. So yeah, just listen to the other artists, support them in supporting me and the communities. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Great,
And I will have everything in the show notes so that you can check out Jack's music and the artists that he's collaborated with. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely delightful. And I'm excited to hear more and keep an ear out for what you're up to.
Absolutely. It's been great. You've been a great interviewer. Thank you so much for having me on.
What an enjoyable and insightful conversation with Jack Marchant. His journey is such a great example of how music careers aren't just about talent. They're about persistence, strategy, and relationships. A few key takeaways. Music for all, no matter the journey. Jack's personal slogan speaks to the power of music to connect people, regardless of background or circumstances. Then, your music career is a business. Jack talked about the importance of pricing your work fairly, knowing your worth, and avoiding the trap of doing work for free just to get experience. The industry only thrives when we value the art and skills we bring to the table. And finally, mentorship is a game changer. Instead of struggling through the years of trial and error, Jack invested in learning from someone more experienced and saw massive improvements in just a few months. So your action step, if you're an artist or producer looking to grow your career, ask yourself, do you have a clear brand message? If someone finds you online, do they immediately understand who you are, what you offer, and why it matters to them? Are you pricing your work in a way that reflects its value? If you're consistently undercharging or offering services for free, it's time to rethink your strategy. Do you have a mentor or trusted guide in your field? Having someone who has already walked the path can save you years of frustration. If you need help clarifying your message and positioning your brand, I'd love to help. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Every bit of support helps indie artists and producers find the tools they need to succeed. Now, to close things out, I'm excited to share a track produced by Jack Marchant. Stick around to hear Stupid in Love by Nima Star. And as always, keep chasing your second verse.
You saw me a story about you and me, a life we could have had together. It was all a dream. Now I'm sitting here with my head in my hand, feeling like an idiot for believing your plans. This picture that you painted was a work of art, and after all the shit, it still felt